She crashed through his barn door, blood trailing down her spine. 3 arrows were buried deep between her shoulders. She didn't cry, she didn't speak. She just collapsed against the hay, fingers clawing for something to hold. He dropped his hammer, reached for her. Her eyes rolled back. Then came the thunder of hooves. A second later, the earth trembled. He ran to the window. Riders, hundreds. Dust boiling behind them, every last one turning toward his land, toward his barn. He grabbed his rifle, heart bucking. The girl coughed once, then whispered 2 words he didn't understand. The horses stopped all at once. Silence. Then a voice rose above the stillness. It wasn't English, and it was calling his name. He pressed the cloth to her back again. The arrows were deep. Flesh clung to the wood. Blood kept coming. Her face twitched. A breath rasped through her teeth. Then a word. Soft, like a song cracked by dust. She said it again. Same rhythm, different tone. He leaned closer. Her eyes flicked open, clouded, pale brown with gray circling the iris. Not fear, not pain, just the thin edge of some old knowledge working through her fever. The cloth was soaked. He threw it aside, grabbed the strip of old saddle leather he kept near the feed sacks, pressed it in. The 3rd arrow moved when she breathed. She mumbled again. Louder. More urgent. Not Apache. He had known Apache scouts. Had drunk coffee with one once. Long ago, they spoke sharper. This language was curved, harsher and older. Like the rocks that whispered when the wind passed through the buttes at dusk. She jerked. Then stillness. A strange stillness, like she had let go of something. He sat back on his heels. Her shirt had torn where the blood ran. Just above her hip, something caught the lantern light. Leather. A thin strap tied at her waist. He tugged gently, pulled free a carved disc no larger than his palm, polished dark. It shimmered where her blood had touched it. Marks ran along the edge, not letters. More like scars, made on purpose. He turned it over. His breath caught. The back was hollowed to hold something. A tiny ridge of dried paste ringed the hollow space. Whatever had once been in there was gone. He looked at her again. She was breathing shallowly. Outside, the horses shifted. He rose and crossed to the side window. The warriors hadn't moved. They stood on foot now, circling the barn at a wide distance, silent, like shadows waiting for dusk to do its work. They weren't hiding. They weren't charging. No one shouted. They were waiting. He counted quickly. 12 rows, maybe 40 in each. Spears, bows, rifles, no torches, no signal flags. But still they waited. He held the medallion in his palm. It was warm. Then he remembered. Not the face. Not the place. Just a sound. A moment long buried. He had been 19, lost, hungry, caught between 2 riverbeds with the sun hammering down. An old woman had found him, pulled him up from the sand, fed him with something bitter and black. And just before she turned away, she said a word. The same word the girl had whispered just now. It was not Apache. He stepped back from the window. The barn creaked. The girl stirred again. He looked at her face, then at the medallion, then out at the warriors once more. Still they waited, and for the first time since she had fallen through his door, he began to wonder if they had come for her at all, or for him. He had seen the medallion once before, not in a barn, not in blood, but around the neck of a girl with greenstone eyes and hands that smelled of sweetgrass and crushed berries. 15 years ago. He had lived by the river's edge then, not quite a settler, not quite a guest, just a boy with a busted knee and no home left to speak of. They had taken him in. The border tribe, not many, maybe 30 souls, hunters, basket weavers. 2 old horses and 1 rusted rifle that jammed if you breathed near it. He learned slowly. I learned to make fire without matches. I'd learned the smell of bear grass in spring. Learned the sound of drums that didn't ask for war. And he learned how to be still, truly still. That was something they had never taught him on the cattle road. She was the daughter of the one they called Keeper. Not a chief, more like a memory with a spine. He watched her paint river stones with streaks of red dust. I watched her laugh when the dogs stole his food. Watched her sleep under cotton tents with her palm curled towards the fire. One day, she gave him a carved disc. Same size, same shape, dark as smoke. She didn't tell him what it meant, just slipped it into his hand and walked away. He kept it in the hollow of a tree behind the sleeping huts. He thought maybe that meant he lived there too. The fire came a week later, not from the tribe, not from within. Riders, 3 of them, looking for a man. He never learned who, never learned why. They brought rifles. The tribe brought nothing. He remembered the sound of dogs screaming, the way tents folded like paper, the way ash tasted when it mixed with marrow. He had grabbed nothing, not his knife, not his water skin, not the medallion. He had run. He had run before the 3rd man finished loading his 2nd shot. He had run before the girl with greenstone eyes could call out his name. She had reached for him, and he had turned. He never saw her again. The desert swallowed him for 3 days. He crawled into a canyon and let the sun carve his face into something thinner than pride. He buried the name, buried the image, buried the sound of the scream that wasn't his, but lived inside his ribs like a second heartbeat. And he never went back. Not to them. Not to any of it. He built his own land on dry soil. No neighbors, no borders. Just silence. Until now. Until this girl. With blood slick on her back, with a disc tied at her hip, with a whisper in a forgotten tongue. The floor beneath her was soaked. He stared at her hand, where it lay open near the edge of the hay. She had reached for him too. She stirred. Just a twitch at first, a spasm in her thigh, then a gasp like air pulled through sand. He knelt beside her. The blood had slowed, thickened into dark streaks across her ribs. Her eyes fluttered open. He waited, held his breath without meaning to. She looked past him, toward the rafters, toward something he couldn't see. Then her lips parted. One sentence, each word slow. Ground out like old stone against wood, you bury it before moonrise. Her voice cracked, her head lulled. He reached to steady her, but she was already gone again, not dead, just buried inside whatever world her mind had run to. He waited. Nothing more came. The heat in the barn hung low and still. Even the flies had paused. He rose and crossed to the window again. Outside, the air shimmered above the dust. The warriors had not moved from their places, but the pattern had changed. Now they held torches, not raised, not ready for fire, just low to the ground, each one planted in a circle around the barn. One by one they lit them. Not fast, not in alarm, but slow, deliberate, like a rite. He counted again. The outer ring now glowed with flame, a quiet perimeter of waiting light, the kind you used when telling stories meant to summon or bind or burn. His mouth was dry. He turned back to the girl. What had she meant? Bury it. What was it? The medallion or the memory? The disc she carried that looked so much like the one he had once been too much a coward to hold on to. He stepped to the edge of the barn door. Not enough to reveal himself, just enough to feel the heat from the sunlight touch his boots. There was movement. One figure broke from the circle. An elder, cloaked in layered cloth. No weapon, no mask. Just eyes so black the pupils disappeared into them. The man walked slow across the dust, not toward the door, not toward him. He stopped at the edge of the barn and placed something in the dirt. Then he turned and walked back the way he came. The object glinted once before settling into shadow. A spade. Old. Metal dark with use. Handle worn to bear grain. No words were spoken, no signal given. But the message was clear. The ritual had begun. Whether the girl lived or not, whether the man accepted or refused, the moment had come. He stepped back into the barn. She had not moved. He knelt again. His knees cracked against the dry planks. "You bury it before moonrise." He stared at her face. The shadows from the slats had begun to stretch across the floor. They had not come to kill him, not yet. But they had come for a reason, and moonrise would not wait. He stared at the spade where it lay in the dirt. The wind had gone still. Even the circling fires barely flickered. Behind him, the girl let out a sound. Not a word. Not pain. Just breath pushed through dry lungs. He looked back. Her hand twitched, then lifted, slow, shaking. Her fingers pointed toward the rear wall of the barn, then dropped. He hesitated. Every part of him said no. Said, "Stay inside. Hold the rifle. Let the sun go down and take her with it." But the silence outside had changed. It was waiting. And waiting things were always watching too. He moved fast, crossed to the barn's rear wall, pulled a crate aside, kicked open the door with the heel of his boot. Light poured in, warm, blinding. The fire circle flickered at the edge of his vision. He stepped out, grabbed the spade. The handle was smooth from many hands. Then he walked behind the barn, out of view, out of reach. The dirt was hard, desert-packed, dry from decades of sun. But he dug. At first the spade bounced, skidded, the steel ringing dully with each blow. Then the ground softened. He kept going. Sweat clung to his neck, his back, his palms. The sun pressed down like a second weight. He dug faster, a foot down, then more. The blade hit something. He dropped to his knees, brushed the dirt back with both hands. Burlap, worn, stiff with age and rot. He pulled it up. Something shifted inside, loose, hollow. He opened it. Bones. Not many. Not full, small. Blackened at the ends. Beside them, tied in a twist of rawhide, was a feathered talisman, red and white. Tips singed, beads still clinging to the braid. He lifted it carefully. The bones were scorched. The talisman smelled faintly of char and cedar. He looked up. The sun hung low now. The shadows of the warriors stretched across the dirt like black roots reaching from all sides. He stood, and the chanting began. Soft, almost inaudible at first. A single voice, from the far side of the circle, then another, then many, low, rhythmic. No anger in it, just weight, age, memory. He walked back to the barn with the bundle clutched in both arms. Each step felt heavier than the last. At the threshold, he paused. The girl still lay where he left her. Her blood had seeped between the floorboards. Some of it had stained the edge of the door. He stepped inside, laid the bundle on the hay beside her. The chanting outside continued, steady, relentless. He sat beside her and wiped the sweat from his brow. She did not wake, but her lips moved again, and though no sound came, he felt the word she meant, not in his ears, but in his chest, where guilt lived. He did not know what he had just dug up, but it had been waiting. And now it was here. He took the bundle again. The bones had shifted inside. The talisman had curled inward, as if the air outside the earth had drawn it closed. The chanting grew louder. Not a song. Not mourning. Something in between. He stepped back out, this time into the open. The barn loomed behind him. The warriors held their ground, but one figure moved. The elder. Same layered cloth, same patient gait, face marked by age and ash. No weapon in hand, just a staff carved with rings that glinted in the firelight. The man walked forward until he stood 10 paces from the barn's shadow, then stopped. He raised the staff, drove it into the ground, then spread both arms wide. The circle fell silent. The wind stirred once. The man watched from the center of the ring. The elder pointed to the bundle in his hands, then pointed to the earth. Slow, measured, a gesture born of ritual, not command. The man dropped to his knees. He dug again. The earth gave more easily this time, as if it recognized what it was meant to receive. He placed the bundle inside. The talisman lay across the bones like a broken wing. The elder began to speak, not loud, Not to the man, to the fire, to the circle, to the dust. Each phrase ended with a word that struck the chest like a stone in water. When the last line was spoken, the elder pointed again. This time, not at the man, but at the girl. Still inside the barn, still bleeding, still alive. The meaning cracked through him like dry wood splitting. This was no funeral. This was not her mourning. This was her reckoning, and this was her return. He stood slowly, stepped back toward the barn. But the elder raised a hand, stopped him, shook his head once, then opened his own hand, held it flat, and with slow fingers drew a circle in the air, then tapped the center. The man did not move. Then he understood. Something was missing. The circle was not whole. The center lay empty. He turned his head toward the barn, to the girl, to the medallion. The burial was not complete. The offering was not full. She had returned the bones, returned the talisman, but not the object that bound them. The disc with the carved symbols, the thing he had pulled from her waistband, the thing he now kept tucked inside his coat. The elder waited, but did not step forward, would not cross the threshold. This was sacred ground now, not for warriors, not for vengeance, but for judgment. And he was holding back its final piece. Innocence or guilt did not matter here, only the return, only the seal. And without the medallion, the circle would stay open, and open circles never stayed silent for long. His hand touched the medallion inside his coat. The metal had warmed against his chest. He could feel the edge of the carved ridge press against his skin. He stepped forward. The elder's gaze followed him. The warriors watched without moving. The fires pulsed in rhythm. The silence held like a drawn breath. He reached into his coat. Fingers found the leather strap. Then came the shot. Sharp, cracking, close. The elder dropped before the echo reached the trees. Dust lifted where his body fell. Screams followed. Not from the warriors, from the ridge. 5 riders thundered down the slope behind the barn. Not part of the circle, not part of any right. They came fast, shouting over the rising dust, rifles raised. He froze. Medallion still in hand. The warriors broke. Formation. Some fell back. Others dropped to the ground. The chant stopped. Another shot cracked. A torch flew. It landed against the outer slats of the barn wall. Dry wood caught fast. The flames rose in an instant, crawled up the haystack, licked the beams. He turned and ran. Inside, the air had already shifted. Smoke clawed along the rafters. Heat pressed low from the fresh blaze. The girl still lay unmoving. A red stain now haloed her body. He grabbed her under the arms. The burial bundle still sat near the feed trough. He kicked it closer, pulled her across the floorboards. Her body dragged stiff as rawhide. Another shot hit the wall outside. Splinters burst near his head. He dragged her behind the water barrels, the only place the flames had not reached yet. He dropped beside her. Her breath still moved, barely. Outside, boots hit the ground, men yelling, orders shouted. The medallion burned in his fist. He tucked it into the folds of the burial cloth, wrapped it twice, tied it fast. The flames climbed higher. He looked out through the cracks between the boards. 2 of the bounty hunters approached the front. One kicked the door open. Smoke poured out. The man pulled his rifle from the hook above the trough. His hands shook. The girl let out a breath. No words, just pain escaping her ribs. He stood, waited, listened. Outside, a voice called for the girl, said her name, promised coin, promised mercy. Then I laughed. He stepped away from the barrels. Shadows moved just beyond the doorframe. He raised the rifle, waited for the bootstep to cross the threshold. Smoke thickened. The fire roared. Outside, another gun fired. Then silence again. The circle was broken. The rite undone. He looked down at the girl, then at the bundle tied with the medallion, then at the flame climbing toward the roof. The barn would not last, and neither would they. The smoke thickened fast. It rolled down from the rafters. slow and low like a crawling animal. Flames chewed through the upper beams. Hay popped and cracked. The floor groaned. He crouched low behind the barrels, pulled the girl toward him again. Her skin was burning hot. He touched her cheek. Her eyes opened. Not glassy this time, wide, sharp. She gasped. Her hands shot forward, grabbing at his shirt. Her mouth moved fast, words tumbling over one another. He tried to hush her. I tried to listen. Then one word broke through. Not stolen? She said it again, slower. Not stolen. Her eyes held his. The medallion, the bundle, the bones. Not stolen, given. He stared at her. She coughed. Blood slicked her lip, then she spoke again. Clearer. I was the one offering. The words struck harder than the fire. She was not the thief. She was the price. The one sent to make peace. The one chosen to carry the weight of old sin. Not hers. Theirs. She had not run from guilt. She had run from fate. The medallion did not belong to her. It had been placed upon her as a seal, as a mark. And when she fled, she did not just reject the tribe, she rejected the spirits, the balance, the ancient grief they hoped to bury through her body. The rite outside had not been for her return, it had been for her surrender. And now the circle was broken. He looked at her again. Sweat ran down her face. Her eyes fluttered, her grip on his shirt weakened. He looked toward the flames. The door was no longer an escape. The smoke was everywhere now. The light flickered orange and black across the boards. He moved fast, dragged her toward the back wall again, kicked a crate through the lowest slats. Daylight peeked in, narrow and sharp. He shoved the bundle through first, then her. She groaned but did not resist. He pushed until her legs cleared. Then he followed, fell into the dirt on the far side, coughed hard. The air outside was clean. He looked around. No riders, no warriors. Just smoke behind them and the burial bundle clutched to his chest. He pulled her to the edge of the barn's shadow. She looked up at him once, then passed out. He sat still, hands in the dust, mind racing. She had chosen life, in a world that had chosen to sacrifice her, and now he had chosen too, not to watch, not to run, but to carry her out of the fire. Whatever came next, it would not be silence, it would not be peace, but it would be a choice, and this time he would not bury it. The barn hissed behind him, smoke twisted into the sky like a curse too long held. He stood alone now, one rifle in his hand, one breath left that did not rattle. She lay behind the trough where he left her, hidden in shadow, wrapped in smoke. The medallion clutched in her arms with the bones and the talisman. He walked forward, into open dust, into light. 3 riders watched from behind their horses. One is already aiming. One loading. One grinning with the slow, certain curl of a man who thinks he has seen the end of it all. The man did not shout, did not warn. He raised the rifle and fired. The first shot caught the leftmost rider clean in the chest. He dropped without a sound. The second raised his carbine. Too slow. The man fired again. The bullet hit high in the collarbone, sent the shooter spinning into the dirt. The third screamed, charged, he fired, missed. The last rider came fast, rifle swinging. The man turned to run, stopped, feet locked to the ground. Not again. The shot came, struck low in his ribs. He fell to one knee. Blood ran hot through his shirt. The rider dismounted, walked forward with the rifle pointed at his chest. The man looked up. Smoke filled the space behind the outlaw like a veil. The warrior circle had not moved, but the air had changed. The rider raised his gun, grinned again, and then something blurred past the light. A flash of bare feet, a shape cloaked in dust. The rifle clattered to the ground. The rider gasped. His throat opened in a line of red, then collapsed beside the others. 3 warriors stood behind the fallen man. Their knives are silent. Their faces are expressionless. They did not speak, did not gesture. They simply looked at the wounded man where he knelt. He clutched his side. Blood soaked through his fingers. He tried to stand, failed. One warrior stepped forward, bent low. Nothing was offered, just wait. The man rose slowly, every bone screaming, every inch of him is burning. He nodded once. The warrior stepped back. The others turned away. The man followed them, past the bodies, past the fire, past the circle that still smoldered in the dirt. The barn collapsed behind him, with a groan of beams giving way. He did not turn. He walked back to her. She was still breathing, still holding the bundle, still waiting. He dropped beside her, pressed one hand to his wound, the other to her shoulder. Her eyes opened, only for a moment, long enough to see him there, still there, not running, not gone. The smoke drifted toward the hills. The fires were out. The ground cooled by morning. Ash drifted across the dirt, like dust returned to its first shape. She knelt where the barn had once stood. The blackened beams still smoked beneath the sun, but the fire was done. In her lap lay the bundle. She opened it slowly. The cloth crackled where dried blood had stiffened the fold. Inside, the bones had shifted again. The talisman was dark with soot. The medallion sat at the center like a wound that had never closed. The man watched from the shade of the water barrels. He could not stand. His side throbbed with every breath. The wrap she had made from her dress clung to the blood at his ribs. Each thread held fast like fingers refusing to let go. She did not look at him. She began to dig, not with the spade, with her hands. The dirt gave beneath her touch, one shallow grave. She placed the bones first, then the talisman. Then, last, the medallion. Her hands hovered before she let it fall. The circle was complete now. Whatever name it once carried had been spoken in silence. Whatever price it demanded had been paid in flesh and fire. Behind her, the warriors stood still. Not close, not far. Just enough. The elder who had fallen had been wrapped and buried before sunrise. No song, no stone, only stillness. Now the others waited. The man shifted. The pain blurred his vision. He blinked hard. She rose, brushed the dust from her knees, turned. I walked to him. Kneeling again, she reached for his side, tore another strip from her dress and pressed it to the wound. Her fingers moved slowly, careful, certain. She did not speak. He did not need her to. The blood stopped flowing. She sat beside him. The wind passed between them. The warriors began to leave. No signal was given. They simply turned, one by one, feet lifting in rhythm across dry ground. The fire circle still marked the outer edge like the memory of a dream too old to retell. The last to leave was the youngest. He paused, met the man's gaze, then nodded once. No promise, no curse, just a knowing. Then he was gone. The man leaned back against the barrel. His breath slowed. The sun had risen high now. Warm, unforgiving, familiar. She stayed beside him. The earth where she buried the bones looked no different than the rest. No marker. No name. But something had ended, and something else had not. He did not speak. He let the silence carry them both. The barn was gone. The fire was done. But she had not left, and neither had he. They began with the corner post. The blackened beam was too cracked to save, but he left part of it buried in the ground beneath the new one. A quiet anchor. Something old to hold up something new. She did not speak as they worked. She lifted the hammer, carried the wood, spread clay along the joints where sunlight might break through. Her hands were thin but steady. The wounds on her back scabbed over, then faded, leaving only pale lines like threads stitched by fire. His side healed slower. The scar stayed hard beneath the skin. He moved with caution, slept stiff, rose slow. But he rose. Together they built the barn again, not as it was. Better. Lower rafters, wider doors. A second trough for water, no loft above. Just sky when the doors opened wide. She hung the medallion on the wall when the last board was nailed. No ceremony, just her fingers pressing it into the grain, where it caught the light without ever gleaming. He never asked why. She never explained. Every morning after that, a feather appeared by the door. Always the same kind. White tip, red shaft, threaded at the base with one loop of rawhide. Sometimes it was tucked into the corner. Sometimes it lay flat against the wood. Once it was stuck upright in the crack between two planks, fluttering in the heat wind like a small, waiting signal. He never saw who left them. She never spoke of it. But each time he bent to pick one up, he looked over his shoulder first. Not in fear, just to be sure the day had come again. She tended the ground outside the barn, dug shallow beds for roots, lined stones in circles, laid bones in quiet places and covered them with flat slate pieces gathered from the ridge. He fixed the fences, repaired the hinges on the back gate, repainted the troughs and relined the roof. No rider came. No fire returned. The hills watched from a distance, but they kept their silence. She touched the medallion every night before sleep, sometimes just with her palm, sometimes with her forehead pressed against it. He never asked. He only listened to the way the wind moved around the new walls. At dusk, he stood in the doorway, the floor smooth beneath his boots, the boards pale and clean. The desert light poured in with a warmth that did not ask questions. One morning, he found the feather waiting again, this time placed gently at the center of the open doorway, the sun behind it, long shadow reaching toward him like a line drawn across the earth. He picked it up, turned it in his hand, then stepped outside. The door swung open behind him. No lock, no need, only light. And the mark of another day survived.